Well, we're kind of getting into murky waters. For the sake of stretching, I would say no, but there's kind of like two things, there's two buts to that statement. The first but is you and I both have suffered from herniated discs. And one of the ways that and I actually have a herniated disc also in my neck, which causes a lot of problems. So interesting, it's neck and lumbar spine for me. But one of the ways that I've healed it is my chiropractor has one of these extension tables. Um,
Hmm.
and it's a really great extension table, but that in and of itself is stretching. And I remember the last time my lower back was in trauma, um, which is an interesting story in and of itself. It kind of what led to the trauma. I'm very aware of now what can traumatize my lower back. And when he put me on it, I remember the first two times after, when my lower back was traumatized, and he kind of increased the tension level a little bit so it would open up more. So
Hmm.
basically, what it's doing for your people listening is it pulls the spine apart in a gentle way, by the way. It's not as
Yeah.
it sounds painful, but it's not. It's actually quite delicious. But it pulls the spine apart, thus creating space for the disc material to go
Mm.
back into the spine. But I remember the first few times he did it after my lower back was traumatized. And he said, okay, come and, get up and move over to my other table. And I immediately got up and my lower back, it felt like it was about to seize, like tighten up, because none of the proprioception was there. And that was like an affirmation for me to go, oh yeah. And he actually said to me, yes, you don't have any proprioception in your lower back, and probably even in my trunk flexors as well. Um, and so he said, just give it a moment so it will start to come back a little bit. So I think like in those kind of moments, like there is a place for stretching, but I say that very hesitantly because people, when they hear the exception, they often make it the rule. The other place is in this word, and I don't like using this word as dynamic stretching because again, it's got that word stretching in it. And if you're doing dynamic stretching properly, you're actually not stretching anything, you're actually working on increasing the strength of the muscles that are actually dictating the movement. So, an example of that, kind of what we were talking about with the biceps and triceps, if you're lying on your back and you want to stretch your hamstrings, quote unquote, well, what you really want to do is make sure that your quads are activating properly. So you can lie on your back and just bring your leg up to 90 degrees and without using your hands, use your quads to pull the leg closer to you. And that will start to activate the quads and thus, for lack of better words, release the hamstring tension.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, what I would say is that first of all, you did a little bit. You need to define what stretching you're talking about, I
Yeah.
think, and also when you're doing it and on what tissue. So, obviously, I went through personal training, 27 years ago, whatever it was. And yeah, we get taught anatomy and we get taught stretching, but we didn't get taught, well, you can work out which muscles are actually tight and therefore potentially need stretching, and which muscles are weak and therefore need strengthening. So that's the first thing. My teacher Paul Check says, the muscles are like spokes of a bicycle wheel. If the bicycle wheel is, it's completely round and straight, all the spikes are at their optimum length. Well,
Yeah.
that would be like having a body with muscles with the optimum length tension in each of the muscles. But in the bicycle wheel, if you've got some spokes that are too loose and some spokes that are too tight, now you've got a wonky wheel. So if you've got a wonky wheel, you need to loosen the tight spokes and tighten the loose spokes to make the wheel, perfectly round again.
Mm.
And, you know, that philosophy we can use with the body as well. So, it generally takes me about 4 hours to assess someone's physical body and their biomechanics. And at the end of that, I've got a list of muscles that I know are tight or facilitated. I've got a list of muscles that I know are potentially long or inhibited. And then you can prescribe a really kind of, laser guided way, so that, because what generally happens is, and I don't really want to bash people, but if you go to, say, a personal trainer, they're just going to get you to stretch muscles. It might be the muscles that you've just worked, but it won't be, right, let's actually find out what the body needs and then let's give it what it needs. The other thing is, that I think is important as well, is what kind of stretching you do at what time.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to go and do a sports event, the last thing you want to do is a yoga class or long static stretches, because then, like you were saying, you're switching off those muscle spindle cells, sending signals back to the brain. You're switching off that proprioception. Now the brain doesn't know what's going on once you start moving, and then that's when you're going to start tearing muscles.
Yeah.
However, what I would say is, if you're just about to go to bed, that will be a good time to stretch tight muscles. However you want to do it, like, as you said, if you want to stretch the hamstrings, why not contract the quad? That's definitely going to help, right? Because you're going to get that reciprocal inhibition of the hamstrings. It's going to allow it to move further, or allow the knee to extend further. So I think it's really important to kind of differentiate, what do we mean by stretching? Let's look at the different types of stretching, and at what time is each one appropriate, and are you stretching the right tissues? That's kind of my take on it.